Okay, so you should have already completed the review on pages 619 through 622. Remember, you needed to complete the review and the reflect. And now it's time to check. So all you should have out on your desk is your review, your extra sheet of paper that you use to show your work, and your red pen. Your pencils and erasers should all be put away. All you should have is your red pen, your review, and your extra sheet of paper. If your review is still in your math book, that's okay. Just make sure that you still have your extra sheet of paper out and your red pen. Okay, let's go ahead and start with number 1, the vocabulary check. I know it's hard to see on here. I can't get rid of that glare. I'm not exactly sure what to do, so just make sure that you are following along. And make sure you're watching this video in full screen, and if there is a way to zoom, if you need to, make sure that you do zoom. Okay, so number 1 says, use the numbers on the number cubes to create each type of fraction listed below. You can use the numbers more than once. So, the first one says, in this first top box, it says like fractions. Now, there are lots of options that we could have made. So I will go ahead and list every option that I can think of. First of all, we can do 1/4 and 3/4. And we can do 1/6, 3/6, and 4/6. So, as long as you have at least 2 of those, either 1/4, 3/4, 1/6, 3/6, or 4/6. Now, I'll show you non-examples. That means these are not examples of like fractions. So if you have one of these, you need to take it out. You cannot have 4/4 or 6/4 because those are improper fractions. You cannot have 4/3, 6/3, or anything. You cannot have an improper fraction. If you have an improper fraction, you need to cross it out, and you need to write regular fractions. You cannot have a like fraction, or you cannot show like fractions with improper fractions. Okay. The next one says mixed numbers. So we're going to use these numbers. So we're going to go ahead. I'm going to try to list as many as I can think of. We can do 1 and 3/4, 3 and 1/4, 4 and 1/3. Let's see, 6 and 1/3. Okay, it's going to take a really long time to list all of them. So, as long as you have a whole number and a fraction part that is not an improper fraction, you are correct. Now, simplest form. Let's see. I could take these. What I would have to do is I would just have to list any fractions that I can make that are in simplest form. So, of course, any unit fractions would be in simplest form. So that would be 1/3, 1/4, or 1/6. We could also do 3/4. I think that's it. Let's see. So we've got the unit fractions because we can't do 3/6 because that would simplify to 1/2. We can't do 4/6 because that would simplify to 2/3. So I think that's all of our options. Yep, that's it. Those are our options. So you needed to have either 1/3, 1/4, 1/6, or 3/4, or if you had all of them, you are good. Okay, let's move on to number 2. Okay, so for number 2, what we're doing is we're finding each sum and then writing it in simplest form. Well, we have steps for that. Step 1, when you're adding like fractions, is add the numerators as you normally would. So let's go ahead and do that for number 2. We have 1/4 plus 4/6. So if we add the numerators like we normally would, 1 plus 4 equals 5. Step 2 is the denominator stays the same. Well, we have a denominator of 6 in our addends, so that means our sum has a denominator of 6. Now, the third step is check for simplest form. We can tell that this fraction, 5/6, is already in simplest form because the numerator and the denominator are each only one number away, and that always means that the fraction is in simplest form. So 1/6 plus 4/6 equals 5/6. Number 3, we have 3 3/5 plus 2 1/5. Now, this is where I want you should have used a separate sheet of paper to convert these fractions to mixed numbers so that you can add them, and then you have to use that same sheet of paper to convert it back to from an improper fraction back into a mixed number. So if you did not do that, pause this video, go ahead and do that right now. I'm letting you do that just like I did with the check my progress, and then come back and check it. So, number 3, let's go to our separate sheet of paper and do number 3. Step 1 for converting mixed numbers to improper fractions is start with the denominator, which is 5, and multiply it by the whole number, which is 3. 5 times 3 equals 15. Then we add the numerator, which is 3. So now we have 18. And that's our new numerator. 3 3/5 is equivalent to 18 fifths. Remember, the denominator always stays the same. Now we have to convert 2 1/5. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to start with the denominator, multiply it by the whole number. Oops. I got it backwards. We're going to start with the denominator, which is 5, and multiply it by the whole number, which is 2, and then we get 10. Now we're going to add the numerator, which is 1, to get 11. So that means our new numerator is 11, and our denominator stays the same. Now we're just going to follow the steps for adding like fractions. We add the numerators first. 18 plus 11 is 19. Oops, whoops, not 19. 29. And our denominator stays the same. So we have 29 fifths. Now we can't leave our answer as an improper fraction, so we need to go back to our separate sheet of paper and convert it to a mixed number. To do that, you divide the numerator by the denominator. 5 goes into 29 5 times. 5 times 5 is 25. 29 minus 25 is 4. 4 is less than our divisor, so that means our answer is, for 29 divided by 5, is 5, remainder 4. Now we have to write our mixed number. Well, the whole number comes from the quotient without the remainder. So our whole number is 5. Our numerator comes from our remainder, which is 4. And our denominator stays the same. So that means 3 3/5 plus 2 1/5 is 5 4/5. 4/5 is the numerator and the denominator are only one away from each other, so that means it is in simplest form, so we do not have to simplify it. Okay, number 4, we have 2/8 plus 4/8. These are regular fractions, these are regular like fractions, so we can go ahead and add them normally. Step 1, add the numerators. 2 plus 4 is 6. Step 2, the denominator stays the same. So our answer is 6/8. But now we have to check for simplest form. We can tell that 6/8 is not in simplest form because both of them are even. If both numbers are even, they are not in simplest form because they at least have the number 2 as a factor in common. We can use our basic facts to figure out what the greatest common factor of 6 and 8 is. And using those, we know that our greatest common factor is 2. So we're going to divide each by 2. Make sure that you have shown the division. If not, write it right now with your red pen. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So 2/8 plus 4/8 in simplest form is 3/4. Okay, go ahead and turn to the next page and get ready to keep checking. Okay. For numbers 5 through 7, the directions say find each difference and then write in simplest form. So for number 5, we have 3/4 minus 2/4. Those are regular fractions, so we can just follow the steps for subtracting like fractions. Which, step 1, we just subtract the numerators as we normally would. 3 minus 2 is 1. Step 2 is the denominator stays the same. Our denominator and our minuend and subtrahend are 4, so that means the denominator in our difference is 4. So that means 3/4 minus 2/4 is 1/4. 1/4 is a unit fraction, and we know that unit fractions are always in simplest form. Number 6, we have 5 2/3 minus 2 1/3. That is a mixed number, or that's subtracting mixed numbers. So we're going to go ahead to our separate sheet of paper, which you already should have done. If not, pause this video, go do it right now. And we're going to convert these mixed numbers to improper fractions, and then we will convert our improper fraction back into a mixed number. So, just like before, converting mixed numbers to improper fractions. Step 1 is we start with the denominator, which is 3, and then we multiply it by the whole number, which in our minuend is 5. 3 times 5 equals 15. And now we add the numerator, which is 2. 15 plus 2 is 17, so that means 5 2/3 is equivalent to 17 thirds. Because remember, we get our denominator stays the same. Now, to convert 2 1/3, we start with the denominator, multiply it by the whole number, which is 2. 3 times 2 equals 6. Now we add the numerator, which is 1. 6 plus 1 equals 7. So that means 2 1/3 is equivalent to 7 thirds. Now we can follow the steps for subtracting like fractions. Step 1, subtract the numerator. 17 minus 7 is 10. Step 2, the denominator stays the same. Now we have 10 thirds. 10 thirds is an improper fraction. We cannot leave our answers as improper fractions. So, let's go ahead and do the division. We're going to divide our numerator by our denominator. 3 goes into 10 3 times. 3 times 3 is 9. 10 minus 9 is 1. 1 is less than our divisor, so that means our answer is 3 remainder 1. Now to get our to get our mixed number, we take the quotient without the remainder and make that our whole number, which is 3. We take the remainder and make that our numerator, which is 1, and our denominator stays the same. 1/3 is another unit fraction, so we know it's in simplest form. So 5 2/3 minus 2 1/3 is 3 1/3. Number 7, we have 8/10 minus 3/10. Those are regular fractions, so we can just solve it like we solve subtracting like fractions. Step 1, subtract the numerators. 8 minus 3 is 5. Step 2, the denominator stays the same. So we have 8/10 minus 3/10 equals 5/10. Well, we can automatically tell that 5/10 is not in simplest form because our numerator, 5, is a factor of our denominator, 10. That also tells us that our numerator will be our greatest common factor. Make sure that you have shown the division. If not, do that right now with your red pen. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 10 divided by 5 is 2. So that means 8/10 minus 3/10 in simplest form is 1/2. For numbers 8 through 15, the directions say use an equation to write each fraction as a product. Use an equation to write each fraction or product as a multiple of a unit fraction. So that means for all of these, we will have multiplication problems as our answers. We will not have actual fractions or mixed numbers or improper fractions as our answers. They will all be multiplication problems. So number 8, we have 3/5. we know that as a unit, the unit fraction for 3/5 is 1/5. To get 3/5, we would repeat a 1/5 tile 3 times. So that means 3/5 equals 3 times 1/5. We have a multiple of a unit fraction. So all of your answers should have a whole number, a multiplication sign, and a unit fraction. Number 9, we have 9/10. Well, we know the unit fraction is 1/10. To get 9/10, we would repeat that 1/10 tile 9 times. So that means that 9/10 is the same as 9 times 1/10. Make sure you're correcting with your red pen if you need to. You will see these on your test, so make sure that you pay attention to how this is done. Pay attention to these directions so that if it asks for to use an equation to write as a multiple of a unit fraction, this is exactly what you're doing. Number 10, 8/12. Well, we know the unit fraction for 8/12 is 1/12. To get 8/12, we would repeat that 1/12 tile 8 times. So that means 8/12 is the same as 8 times 1/12. Number 11, we have 7/8. Well, we know the unit fraction for 7/8 is 1/8. In order to get 7/8, we would repeat that 1/8 tile 7 times. So that means 7/8 equals 7 times 1/8. Okay, number 12 through 15, we have products here. Okay, we don't have fractions like numbers 8 through 11, we have products. We have 4 times 3/5. So that means our answer still has to look like this. It has to be a whole number times a unit fraction. So what we're going to do first is we're going to go ahead and solve this the way we did yesterday, where we end up with an improper fraction. But instead of turning it into a mixed number, we're going to make that improper fraction look like numbers 8 through 11. So in order to do this multiplication, remember we talked about yesterday how we take the whole number and we multiply it by the numerator. That's step 1, multiply the whole number by the numerator. That becomes our numerator. Step 2, the denominator stays the same. So if we take our whole number of 4 and multiply it by our numerator of 3, we get 12. Our denominator stays the same. So now we have 12/5. Now instead of turning that into a mixed number, we're going to make it look like a multiple of a unit fraction. Well, if our denominator is 5, we know that our unit fraction has to be 1/5. If we have 12/5, that means we repeated our 1/5 tile 12 times. So that means 4 times 3/5 is the same as 12 times 1/5. 12 1/5 tiles. Number 13, we have 2 times 9/10. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to start by multiplying the whole number of 2 by the numerator of 9. So 2 times 9 equals 18. Oops, forgot my equal sign. Our denominator stays the same. So now we have 18/10. Now to show it as a multiple of a unit fraction, we know our unit fraction for 18/10 is going to be 1/10. To get 18/10, we would repeat that 1/10 tile 18 times. So that means 2 times 9/10 is 18 times 1/10. Number 14, 3 times 8/12. Let's do it the same way. Multiply the whole number of 3 by the numerator of 8, which equals 24. The denominator stays the same, so we have 24/12. We know our unit fraction is going to be 1/12. In order to get 24/12, we have to repeat that 1/12 tile 24 times. So that means 3 times 8/12 equals 24 times 1/12. Number 15, 6 times 7/8. Step 1, multiply the whole number of 6 by the numerator of 7. 6 times 7 is 42. Our denominator stays the same, so we have 42/8. We know our unit fraction for 42/8 is 1/8. In order to get 42/8, we would repeat that 1/8 tile 48 times. So that means 6 times 7/8 equals 48 times 1/8. Now, when you get to, you will see something similar to these problems on your test. So make sure that you're paying attention to how the answers should look, and make sure that you're paying attention to the directions, because every time you see this, sometimes you may be doing this where you have to write it as a multiple of a unit fraction. Sometimes you may be having to answer the question and actually end up with a mixed number. So pay attention to these directions, because if you see directions just like this on your test, that means you do this. Okay? If you see directions that say find the product, or multiply and write in simplest form, then you will be coming up with an actual answer. For numbers 16 through 19, they look like the problems that we just did, but they are different because the directions tell us to do something different. These directions say multiply, write in simplest form, identify the two whole numbers between which the product lies. So that means we're doing actual multiplication, where we will end up with mixed numbers or potentially regular old fractions, or even a whole number. So we're going to follow this. You're not going to write your answer as a multiple like we did in numbers 8 through 15. You're writing an actual answer. So number 16 is 6 times 1/4. So remember, step 1 when we're multiplying a whole number by a fraction is we multiply the whole number, which is 6, by the numerator, which is 1. 6 times 1 is 6, so that is our new numerator. Our denominator stays the same, so we have 6/4. We can't leave our answer as an improper fraction, so that means you need to go to your separate sheet of paper to convert that improper fraction to a mixed number. So we're going to go over to our separate sheet of paper. If you did not do this, go ahead and do this on your separate sheet of paper with a red pen. This is something that must be done. Okay, we're going to divide our numerator, which is 6, by our denominator, which is 4. 4 goes into 6 one time. 1 times 4 is 4. 6 minus 4 is 2. 2 is less than our divisor, so that means our answer is 1, remainder 2. Our whole number comes from our quotient without the remainder. Our numerator comes from the remainder. And our denominator stays the same. So we have 1 2/4. Now we have to check that mixed number to see if it's in simplest form. We know that the fraction part 2/4 is not in simplest form because our numerator 2 is a factor of our denominator. That also tells us that our greatest common factor is the numerator. So make sure that you have the division on that line. If not, do it with your red pen. And then we're going to solve. Don't forget to bring over that whole number. If you forgot to bring over that whole number, write it with your red pen. That is something you have to remember. Because we know 2 divided by 2 is 1, 4 divided by 2 is 2. So our final answer in simplest form is 1 1/2, not 1/2. If you forgot to bring the whole number over, you're saying that the answer is 1/2, and that is not true. Now we have to say the two whole numbers that it lies between. Remember, whatever our whole number is in our mixed number, that's the first number. So it's between 1, because that's our whole number, and 2, because 2 is the next whole number after 1. Number 17, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to multiply, we have 24 times 1/5. So we're going to start by multiplying our whole number by our numerator. 24 times 1 is 24. And our denominator stays the same. We can't leave it like that because that's an improper fraction. So let's go over to our separate sheet of paper and show our division. We're going to divide our numerator by our denominator. 5 goes into 24 4 times. Let me draw a line there so you can see the difference. 4 times 5 is 20. 24 minus 20 is 4. 4 is less than our divisor. So that means our answer is 4, remainder 4. Our whole number comes from the quotient without the remainder. Our numerator comes from the remainder. And our denominator stays the same. So that means our mixed number is 4 4/5. 4 4/5 is in simplest form because our numerator of 4 and our denominator of 5 are only one number away. The whole numbers that it lies between. Well, our whole number is 4, so that means it is between 4 and the next whole number, which is 5. Okay, number 18, we're going to do the same thing. Multiply the whole number by the numerator. 7 times 3 is 21. Our denominator stays the same. So we have 21/5, but we can't leave our answer like that. Let's see, I'm going to go ahead and erase numbers 16 and 17. So if you don't have 16 and 17 written in your on your paper yet or checked, make sure that you pause and do that. And now we're showing the work for number 18. We divide the numerator by the denominator. 5 goes into 21 4 times. 4 times 5 is 20. 21 minus 20 is 1. 1 is less than our divisor. So that means our answer is 4, remainder 1. Our whole number comes from the quotient without the remainder. Our numerator comes from the remainder, which is 1, and our denominator stays the same. So we have 4 1/5. That fraction part is a unit fraction, so that means it's already in simplest form. Our whole number is 4, so that means this fraction comes between the whole number 4 and the next whole number, which is 5. Now I know I'm going really fast right now, so if you need to pause or rewind, go ahead and do that, but the battery on the iPad's dying, so I gotta get through this part really quick, and then I'll charge it and I'll be back. All in one video probably. Okay, number 19. We have 3 times 4 6. So again, we're gonna multiply the whole number by the numerator. 3 times 4 is 12. Our denominator stays the same, so we have 12/6. 12/6 is an improper fraction, and we cannot leave it like that. So we're going to come over here and show our work. We're going to divide the numerator of 12 by the denominator of 6. 6 goes into 12 2 times. 2 times 6 is 12. 12 minus 12 is 0, which means we have 2 with a remainder of 0. Remember, you can't have 2 and 0/6. So the answer is just 2. And 2 does not lie between two whole numbers that are right next to each other because the answer is exactly 2. If you said it lies between 1 and 3, I will accept that. But the true answer is the product is exactly 2. Okay, now you should be on the back on page... or on the next page, I'm sorry, page 621, and now we have the word problem. So we're on number 20. So read these problems with me in your head as I read them out loud. Kylie and her 2 sisters each have 1/4 of a cup of chopped pineapple. So we've got Kylie and her 2 sisters. We've got 1/4 a cup of chopped pineapple. And we have the word each, which tells us we are going to be multiplying. How much pineapple do they have in all? So what we have to do is we have to figure out, we know they're going to end up with more than what they started with because they each have a 1/4 cup and we're trying to find out how much they have in all. So we know we're either multiplying or adding. The word each tells us that we're multiplying because for the number of people, they each have 1/4 of a cup, so we're going to be repeating. So let's look. We have Kylie and her 2 sisters. Now that's 3 people because that's Kylie and then her 2 sisters. So we have 3, and we know they each have a 1/4 of a cup times 1/4. Make sure you have that equation. If you don't, then you need to use your red pen to write the equation, because remember, all word problems need the equation, the original answer, the answer in simplest form, and the unit. Okay? So we're going to solve this the way that we solved the last few problems. We're going to take the whole number and multiply it by the numerator. 3 times 1 is 3. And then we're going to keep the denominator the same. Now we have 3/4. That's a regular fraction. It's not an improper fraction. And it's in simplest form because 3 and 4 are only one number away from each other. So that means that's our final answer. 3/4 of a cup of chopped pineapple. Because we always need our unit. If you only have 3/4 of a cup, that's fine. If you don't have any unit, you need to use your red pen to write cup of chopped pineapple. If you have something other than cup or chopped pineapple as your unit, then you need to use your red pen to correct it. Okay, number 21. Joshua and his 4 friends, that tells us something. Each tells us we're going to be multiplying or dividing, have 1/2 a package of crackers. How many packages of crackers do they have in all? Explain. Now, the way we explain is we just show our work. Okay, so now we have to figure out our equation. Well, we know it's Joshua and his 4 friends. That's 5 people, because we've got Joshua, and then we've got the 4 friends. So that's 5 in all. If they each have 1/2 a package of crackers, and we're trying to find out how much they have in all, that means we're going to end up with a larger number. So we are multiplying by 1/2, because each of these 5 people have 1/2, so we're repeating this 1/2 5 times. Now, to solve how much they have in all, we're just going to solve this problem. Well, we take our whole number and we multiply it by the numerator, which is 5. Our denominator stays the same. Now, unlike number 20, this is an improper fraction, so we can't leave it that way. So, in order to show our work, we're going to go to our separate sheet of paper. Make sure you have done this. If not, use your red pen to do it right now. And we're going to convert that improper fraction to a mixed number. So we take the numerator and we divide it by the denominator. 2 goes into 5 2 times. 2 times 2 is 4. 5 minus 4 is 1. 1 is less than our divisor. So that means that our answer is 2 remainder 1. This quotient without the remainder becomes our whole number. The remainder becomes our numerator. And our denominator stays the same. We know this is in simplest form because 1/2 is a unit fraction, and also 1 and 2 are only 1 digit away. So that means that in all, they have 2 1/2 packages of crackers. Now, if you have just the word packages, you're fine. If you have anything other than the words packages of crackers, you need to correct that unit with your red pen. Okay, let's move on. Okay, number 22 is going to be different for all of you, so I'm not going to go over that. As long as you have a problem where you have one fraction and then another fraction, and they are like fractions and you're putting them together, that's fine. Because remember, a real world problem is a word problem, like what we've been doing in numbers 20 and 21. So make sure you have that. If not, use your red pen to create one right now. Okay, number 23. Read in your head while I read out loud. There are 35 students in Miss Klempa's class. Suppose each student has 1/10 of a box of pencils. We also see that word each, which means we're putting groups together. How many boxes of pencils do they have in all? And let's see, I gotta change these because they are different in your book than they are in here. Okay, so we've got A, 3 boxes, B, 3.5 boxes, C, 4 boxes, and D, 4.5. Okay, so what we have to do is first we have to figure out our equation. Well, we know that there are 35 students, and they each have 1/10 of a box of pencils. So that means we are repeating this 1/10 35 times. If we follow the steps, we multiply the whole number by the numerator, which is 35, and then our denominator stays the same. So we have 35/10. That is an improper fraction, and we can't leave it like that. So you can go to your separate sheet of paper. I'm going to do it right here because I have room, but you may have done this on your separate sheet of paper. If not, use your red pen to do it. And we are going to divide the numerator by the denominator. 10 goes into 35 3 times. 3 times 10 is 30. 35 minus 30 is 5. 5 is less than our divisor, so that means our answer is 3, remainder 5. Our whole number comes from our quotient without the remainder. So we've got 3. Our remainder is the numerator, and our denominator stays the same. However, the fraction part of that mixed number is not in simplest form, and we can tell that because our numerator is a factor of the denominator. That also tells us that that numerator is going to be our greatest common factor. Make sure you have that division. If not, do it right now. Now before we do our division, let's bring our whole number over because the answer is not, it has a whole number. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 10 divided by 5 is 2. So we have 3 1/2. So the answer is B, 3 1/2 boxes. Okay, now if you have any questions about anything that we did on this review, make sure you can Skype me today or you can Skype me tomorrow because you need to be studying. That means tomorrow, instead of watching a video for math and doing work in the book, what I want you to do is work on IXL for Chapter 9 concepts, work on your extra credit packet, study Chapter 9, study this review. Make sure that you are confident to take a test on Monday on Chapter 9. Okay? Good luck.